This episode is brought to you by Indeed. Stop waiting around for the perfect candidate. Instead, use Indeed sponsored jobs to find the right people with the right skills fast. It's a simple way to make sure your listing is the first candidates see. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs have 4 times more applicants than non-sponsored jobs. So go build your dream team today with Indeed. Get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Want to see your brand on TV? Roku Ads Manager makes it easy to launch targeted ad campaigns in minutes, track results in real time, and drive on-screen purchases with just a click of the Roku remote. Get a $500 match on your first $500 spent with code ROKU500 at ads.roku.com. That's code ROKU 500 at ads.roku.com. Terms apply.
Your planet is now marked for death.
Marvel Studios' The Fantastic Four First Steps is now streaming on Disney+.
We will protect you.
As a family.
Light them up, Johnny!
Marvel's first family is certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes.
That is fantastic.
And critics say it's one of the best superhero movies of all time.
Oh!
Marvel Studios' The Fantastic Four First Steps, now streaming on Disney+. Rated PG-13.
What time is it, Ben? It's clobber time!
Wow. I'm just repeating the wow in case the audience at home didn't hear you count me in with a wow, which I think is probably a bit of an overreaction to a 2-1 victory at home to Nottingham Forest. Kieran, but hello and welcome to The Price of Football, the show that looks at the money behind the beautiful game with me, Kevin Day, and the University's Kieran Maguire. You may be thinking that Forest reference indicates we're recording the pod a little bit earlier this week. We are. It's going out on Tuesday, but we're actually recording this on Sunday night, which apparently is a wow moment. So the fact we're recording this on Sunday night almost certainly means that the Man City story will break tomorrow, Kieran. And at some stage during our trip to Liverpool, we'll have to break off and do. You'll have to break off and do various media stories. Did you enjoy the game against? Well done for beating Forest. As a Palace fan, still looking over our shoulder.
My next door neighbour, Paul. He's a Spurs fan. I've heard messages of support from him as well. So it's a bit of a weird one. It was an okay match. I don't think anybody's really hit heights on a regular basis for 90 minutes this season. It was good enough. 3 points is 3 points.
Well, it was nice to hear you say wow, Kieran. That's it's a bit of a Kate Bush moment there. It was lovely. It's questions day, Kieran. We do have one big news story to talk about and one big news story to trail. And I think we can't be the only pod that has football in the title to not mention VAR this weekend, Kieran. Because frankly, I don't like being left behind. Everybody else will be talking about it, as they have been on every bit of social media and radio and TV this week. Now, this is a football finance pod, Kieran, so I've had to think of a way that I could kind of get a financial angle, if you like. So what I've come up with is, if I had £1 for every time... but I do think there is a serious issue to this, Kieran, and I would like to invite... I don't know what your contacts are like. Well, I would like to invite somebody from the PGMOL onto the show to discuss the financial aspects of what's going on here, because as we know, researching our book, financially, the PGMOL are very opaque organisations. It's very difficult to find out how much referees, assistants, officials are paid, how much VAR costs. So I think it would be nice to get somebody on to explain to us the financial side of what they do, and then we can explain to them the financial implications of what they're doing, because it's all very well. I know TNT have referees mic'd up, or mic'd up referees, or up refereed mics, or whatever. I can't remember exactly which order of words it goes, where Howard Webb basically makes it up as he goes along to a bamboozled Michael Owen, who occasionally says, hang on a second, that was a handball last week. I just think they was, Burnley. I've never been more angry yesterday. I've never wanted Brentford to lose a game. I've got nothing against Brentford, but I've never wanted them to lose a game more than I wanted them to lose it in the 158th minute yesterday, because that decision was ridiculous. Now, Brentford Burnley, I beg your pardon, are not staying up. Simple as that. But they could finish one place higher if they got something out of that game yesterday. They could finish one. Forget the fact that the offside. Forget that both feet were a yard onside, but his shoulder was a millimetre onside. Forget that. That's the rules. Forget that. It's still wrong, but let's forget it because technically it's right, which annoys me. But that decision at the end to disallow the Burnley goal was right, and it could cost Burnley £3 million at the end of the season. And I really would like to discuss. I'd like to find out from PGMOL whether they're aware of the implications. And none of this has got anything to do with the fact that it completely nosed up Palace at Old Trafford this afternoon. Now, I would have said this even if they hadn't completely nosed up Palace at Selhurst Park this afternoon. So, Kieran, I don't know if anybody can get inside PGMOL. You can, because I mean, you got inside Company's house 15 years ago, and you've been laying low in there for quite some time. I know you've got a way of getting in as a sleeper to these organisations, but if you've got a contact there, Kieran, just you tell old Kevin, you let me.
I would do my best. I mean, there are significant financial implications to the work undertaken by referees.
Yeah,
and I have had conversation with one or more of our secret lawyers in terms of this. And the discussion point was along the lines of a football club gets relegated or fails to win qualification for the Champions League, and there has been a significant error made by a referee during the season. Could the club claim for damages? And the answer was, of course, it depends, as one would expect. But they also said it's something which certainly has been discussed, but nobody has been willing to fund the cost of finding out. It could set a precedent. And therefore, VAR is one additional layer of protection that the Premier League stroke EFL, because it would be a case against the footballing authorities along the lines of, well, you could have done more to increase the accuracy of refereeing decisions. So I think we will try and pursue that. We've not had our very good friend Nick DeMarco on the show for some time, so I was going to get in contact with Nick to see if he fancied doing another Ask Nick show. I appreciate just how busy he is, and I think that could be perhaps one of the questions. And we'll be asking members and listeners for their views as to questions as well.
And I want to stress, Kieran, I've got the highest regard for the standard of refereeing in this country. I really have. There's no question whatsoever about the integrity of refereeing in this country. I sometimes think the VAR is affecting their mind as well. I think referees are going to sleep at night mumbling and moaning about VAR and being kicked into the spare room. I've been negotiating my way back into the bedroom for a long time with my broken bones, but I've been told that any more muttering about VAR late at night, that adds another week onto my sentence. The big news story, Kieran, first of all, before we trail with another big news story, and this sort of exploded into the media on Thursday evening, was I contacted you to say that Henry Winter and Jonathan Liu on Sky are losing it with the immensity of this story, demanding immediate points deductions. And that's Chelsea's humongous financial loss, Kieran. I believe the biggest loss ever recorded by an English club.
It is the biggest loss recorded by an English club and the second biggest club ever recorded within football, only ever exceeded by that of Barcelona. And Barcelona are the basket case of European football. So to be sitting on their shoulder is quite an achievement. This story came from the UEFA club football landscape document, which was published on Thursday. For me, it's heaven. It's like wisdom, as far as I'm concerned. And I go through it, and there's loads of data there. by all accounts, I think the reaction of Chelsea was they are A-grading, seeing their backside, seeing their arse proper style about this. They said, you've got absolutely no right to publish that information. We're not happy. We think it's sending out the wrong signal, which is interesting coming from Chelsea. So for people not familiar, the losses were around about £355 million in UEFA profit and loss calculations. Now, UEFA have a different form of calculation to that of the Premier League when it comes to PSR. They also have a different form of calculation to the actual published accounts. So you add bits and you've got bits which can be subtracted as well. Now, we have not seen Chelsea's accounts in detail. Now, if Chelsea are concerned that they are getting unreasonable criticism for these losses, the best way to deal with that is to publish the accounts. The accounts will have been signed off by the directors. They will have been approved by the auditors. The fact that the Premier League has not announced any sanctions or any proposals for a committee suggests that the Premier League is happy with them as well. So they are in the domain within the football authorities. I'm a great believer in the view that if you've got nothing to hide nothing. And Chelsea could actually come across as the good guys in this. They say, well, we are unhappy. Look, these are the accounts. This is where we've got a significant difference to UEFA, and that could nip that particular story in the bud. Until then, I was on Radio 4 today, discussing it. This is bizarre. Apart from it's supposed to be sort of Midsummer Murders and that type of stuff on, and Nick Robinson talking, God knows, about to politicians, and then I sort of pipe up. I've covered the story with TalkSport as well, and from my point of view, to a certain extent, I feel that we're operating in a vacuum because Chelsea have the facility to address this by just being upfront. And when people say, well, they don't have to publish their accounts to the 31st of March, absolutely right. Manchester City stuck out theirs in November. They didn't have to put them out until the end of March. We've seen 4 or 5 other clubs in the Premier League bring out their accounts a wee bit early as well. So just because a deadline is not the same as a target, and I do think that this is a misconception. I know some clubs say, "Oh, we don't want to give away the information too early because other clubs can take advantage of that." No, they can't. I can assure you they cannot do so because the transfer window, when I last checked, didn't open until June.
Yeah. I like the idea that all the posh Brighton fans around you were getting angry during the game. This chap in front of us is muttering on his phone. And you turn around and says Radio 4. Oh, sorry, do carry on. You carry on. Well, we'll stop the game for you, shall we? That'll be fine. So if they've fallen foul of UEFA's rules, first of all, does that imply that the Premier League can't issue any sanctions? And B, if that is the case, what can UEFA do by way of sanctions?
Well, Chelsea are already under a 4-year business plan deal with UEFA. So they failed the UEFA rules last summer, and that was partly due to the fact that first of all, UEFA say sale of the women's team to yourself. That's nonsense. So therefore, that was £200 million to add to the losses. I think as far as the sale of the real estate was concerned, that was included as well. And then the third issue, and I think this is where for me, the people that have devised the UEFA rules are streets ahead of the Premier League when it comes to player swaps, and Chelsea have been involved in quite a few player swaps, but also I think when it comes to involved in deals between clubs which are part of an MCO, those are done for UEFA purposes from what I can make out, on a no gain, no loss basis. So this stops the rather farcical situation that we have seen, where players, why is Forest's third choice goalkeeper going to Newcastle United and Newcastle United sending players to Forest? There was an awful lot of that was taking place. UEFA what they've done is that they have stress tested the model, and they said these are the vehicles which can be used to manipulate and inflate profits. Under the Premier League, it says, yeah, you can do exactly the same, but we're going to allow it. Why does the Premier League allow it and UEFA not allow it? It's because under the Premier League constitution, if you want to change the rules, you've got to have 14 clubs voting in favour. Well, turkeys don't vote for Christmas.
Yeah.
So compare that and contrast that to the UEFA rules, which are devised centrally and don't need club approval. It does mean that you've actually got an independent body able to set off the rules. And this is where, again, for those people who are opposed to the independent football regulator, if we had a football authority such as the Premier League, which itself was independent of being in the pockets of the clubs in terms of voting decisions, this would be a very good argument for not needing the regulator in the first place.
Unlike you, Kieran, I have no particular animus against Chelsea. I dislike Chelsea as much as I dislike all the other 91 clubs in the league, basically, which I think is the duty of every football fan. But the fact is, they do. Well, listening to you has made me suspicious about them the last 18 months for various reasons. To the extent today, you're talking about a player who started that came from Strasbourg, so of course he's well known to Mr. Rossini, but has only played a few minutes until now in the cup game at Hull. Okay, is he right? And he's probably a perfectly good player, I imagine. Looked all right today. But immediately, because of your suspicion and cynicism, which is just rubbing off on me, I started. Now, we've got two stories to trail, Kieran, which we'll be talking about in detail on Thursday's news pod, both United's. The first one is Man United's latest figures were out last week. Is there any headlines that we could look forward to on Thursday?
Well, I think the headline came from the club itself. And in my view, Manchester United are claiming that the reason why they made a profit, which was significantly higher than the same period last year, was due to getting rid of 400 members of staff. In my view, that's nonsense. Part of the reason why their cost base is down is that Manchester United have played 10 matches at home in the first 6 months of the year compared to 15 the previous year because they're not in Europe. Now, you can't blame Doris in the canteen for the fact that Manchester United have played fewer matches. They've also got more players out on loan, so therefore that has a negative impact on the payroll, and certainly the payroll costs are down, and the redundancies will have contributed. But let's try to put this in some form of context. 400 people at, let's say, a cost of £35,000 each salary. That means that you save £14 million in salary costs, a sizable amount of money. Manchester United have got individual players who earn more than £14 million. So yeah. I just felt that the tone was, we are trying to justify our decision. And, this was also in the small print, which came out the following night. Ruben Amorim, and I will always defend managers, and I always say, you get paid off what you're entitled to. He could earn up to £15.9 million in redundancy. Oh. That's more than a year's worth of salaries for the staff that have been made redundant due to the activities of Ineos. So we're going to try to get an employment lawyer on. I think there is a lot of confusion as to what happens in terms of what happens if we saw the Raheem Sterling situation. Yeah, with his contract being wound up. What is the actual position when it comes to managers? And we'll perhaps have a chat and try to get some views from them.
And one of the other stories we'll be covering in great detail on Thursday, also slightly gone under the radar, except perhaps in London, is West Ham saying their losses are such that whatever happens at the end of this season, whatever division they're playing in next season, they're going to have to offload quite a few players and possibly will struggle to buy new ones.
Yes, this does seem strange given that West Ham did sign players in the January 2026 window. Yeah. And the accounts were in fact signed off in December. So why are if they're coming out with this type of announcement, it seems to be an inconsistency. West Ham lost £104 million. So that's £2 million a week in season 24-25. Significant investment in players, yes. The wage bill's not excessive by Premier League standards, but you combine that with amortisation and it does look quite heavy. I've had quite a lot of correspondence with West Ham fans over the course of the past few days, and the reaction very much was, we begrudgingly went along to the London Stadium because it isn't a home. It's not a football stadium. It's not a home.
Yeah.
And we were sold a story. This is part of the advancement of the club. This is going to allow West Ham United to progress as an entity. And now we're not seeing it on the pitch, and we're losing £100 million a year into the bargain.
Yeah. Time for our first question, Kieran, which you'll be amazed to hear is about amortisation. We're like the one show, just going smoothly from a topic into another topic. It comes from Clive Steed, which is a cracking name. If Clive Steed wasn't a referee in the 1970s, I don't know who was, basically.
I just get that Avengers vibe. I don't know about you.
Oh, from Steed. Oh, he was... No, let's talk about football, Kieran. We're getting enough trouble from producer guys. It is waffling on about 70s TV when we say goodbye, let alone we're still saying hello technically 20 minutes in. Clive Steed says, when Mbappe joined Real Madrid, he reportedly got a signing-on fee of €150 million. Could this signing-on fee be amortised over the life of the contract like a transfer fee, or does it all come off as a one-year hit plus his wages, etc.?
Right. My understanding that this deal between Kylian Mbappe and Real Madrid, yes, there is a signing-on fee of £150 million, but it is being paid on an instalment basis. Now, it's partly due to the intricacies of Spanish employment law. It's also partly due to assist Real Madrid from a cash flow point of view as well, because if they'd signed him for €150 million from Paris Saint-Germain, they would have paid the transfer in instalments, as is the want of modern day times. Even for a football club of the magnitude of Real Madrid, you don't have that amount of money spare in the bank. So it will be spread over the life of his contract. So therefore it's effectively amortised, but it's not officially part of his salary. So therefore, that could be paid to potentially another entity. That could be part of his image rights deal and so on in order to mitigate his overall tax burden.
You didn't start a business just to keep the lights on. You're here to sell more today than yesterday. You're here to win. Lucky for you, Shopify built the best converting checkout on the planet. Like the just one tapping, ridiculously fast acting, sky-high sales stacking, champion of checkouts. That's the good stuff right there. So if your business is in it to win it, win with Shopify. Start your free trial today at shopify.com/win.
Now, our next question, Kieran, comes from Nick Mozzadlo. My apologies, Nick, if I've pronounced that incorrectly. It's Moczadlo, or if you're American, it's Moczadlo. I'd love to. Nick, please get in touch and tell me how you spell that. Pronounce that, I beg your pardon. We haven't had a question about Man City for quite some time, Kieran. But here we are. Man City's 115 charges have prompted all sorts of speculation as to the size of punishment they could get. Kieran has talked of a whopping points deduction. You've also, to be fair, Kieran, talked of no points deduction at all. A whopping points deduction, which Nick says could be enough to put them in the bottom three. Wishful thinking, Nick, but may not necessarily act as a sufficient deterrent. Some clubs may think, well, we'll have 6 years of spending, 2 years of it going through the courts, and even if we get relegated, we'll likely be back in a season. So would, for example, a 48-point deduction over 4 years, 12 points a season, be a better deterrent? It would make things difficult for teams to win the league, get into Europe, rather than having one blip season. So I think what you've done, Kieran, is you've put the idea in people's heads about they're now amortising points deductions. They're doing a points deduction over 4 years rather than 1 year, which is essentially what Nick's suggesting. But as a deterrent, it strikes me that and we are speculating about the size of Man City's deterrent, but if it were a huge one-off hit that did see them relegated, as happened to Rangers back in the day, perhaps it would be better to say, right, you can have you're having 12 points, 14 points off a season for 5 years.
Everything is on the table as far as the commission is concerned. Manchester City are innocent until proven guilty. I'm still a great believer in habeas corpus and how that should be. So Manchester City will say, well, this is pure speculation, and it is a really awkward thing because I did a show with Jamie Carragher and Wayne Rooney last week, and one of the questions I was asked.
Just a moment, Ken. I'll just pause while we pick those names up there for you. There you go. Well done.
Just casually dropping in. Wazza and Cara, as we were chatting away.
What do they call you? Maga? Are you
Aaron?
That's very funny.
And there were a few guests on the show as well. And one of the questions that Jamie Carragher asked various people, and then he came to me as if I said, I'm the same as I'm a pub lawyer. I can add up. That's about it. And my view was, given the precedent that has been set by both the Nottingham Forest and Everton deals, that if you get a sporting advantage through a cash spend, then there has to be a sporting sanction. That has been established. Given that the points deductions there were 4 and 6 for those two clubs, and that covered effectively a one-season benefit, there is a very good case for saying that, given that the Manchester City accusations cover a period of 9 years, you really need to be looking at a multiple of that. So probably somewhere in the region of 40 to 60 points. And that was just me being a nerd, multiplying things together, and adding in a bit more, because the nature of the accusations is very, very serious. And that sort of went viral. So then you had media organisations recalculating the Premier League total, because apparently Maguire said they're getting a 60-point deduction. Well, it's news. Have you actually listened to what I've said? No, of course not. So that's where we are now. As far as a tiered or a sort of settlement over a period of years, that could be the case. My concern for that would be is that if Manchester City started on -12, what happens if Manchester City were relegated? Would the EFL apply that? Now, the EFL did that very, very quickly when it came to Leicester City.
Yeah.
But as we discussed in the Leicester City special show last week, we know that Leicester City are appealing, and we don't know upon what grounds, but in my view, one of the grounds that does the EFL actually have the jurisdiction to do this? And given that the EFL changed its constitution in 2025, and the alleged offences by Manchester City covered the period 2009 to 2018, this would be retrospective, application of a rule. So I think it could work. I don't know how that would leave the feelings of other clubs. There is so much obsession about getting into the Champions League. I would imagine that some of the other Super League clubs, they will be quite happy for this to be the case. But would the likes of Crystal Palace and Bournemouth and Brighton and so on say, well, so we've it's all cost us £4 or £5 million in legal fees for this? I would imagine that they'll be even more hacked off than they are at present.
Ex-Super League, we have to say now, Kieran. Remember?
Yes.
Dead in the water, remember. I suppose what you're saying, in terms of the size of the points deduction, and there are still many people who are guessing, that's all we can say, they're guessing there will be no points deduction. Anyway, but that's going to affect the timing of the announcement, isn't it, really? Because if there is a chance that there is even a 20-point deduction, there's no point doing it this season, because it just means that there's argument. Yeah, we're in a strange situation where Man City or Arsenal it's in both of their hands because they have to
Yeah.
play each other. So if either of them wins all their games, they will win the title. But it wouldn't be that much of a punishment for City to get 20 points deducted now. You could argue they wouldn't get the Champions League, but financially they could live with that for a season. Whereas if they were to start next season on a 30-point deduction, that would be much more of a deterrent, you would guess.
Yeah, I think there has to be a cut-off point as far as a decision being made this season is concerned. And the reason for that is, let us say that Manchester City are found guilty, and I keep repeating, they are not guilty as yet.
Yes, of course.
And it's a 40-point deduction. That would put them sort of lower half of the Premier League. If it was a 60-point deduction, could that put them into the bottom three? Yes, it could. And then we go into, if that occurred at the end of April and there's 2 matches left, I think that would be wholly unfair.
Yeah.
It'd be wholly unfair on Manchester City and be wholly unfair on the other clubs potentially going in for relegation. So I think there has to be some sort of common sense cut-off date, because let's say that you're looking at the likes of West Ham, Forest and Spurs, and if that, my view is that the cut-off should be the 31st of March, because that still leaves 7 or 8 games. If you are the coach of those clubs and you've got a home match against Liverpool or Arsenal or one of the big teams, if you're desperate for a win, you set up the side. You say we need to all guns blazing. If, however, City are now 7 points behind and there's 5 games left, look, lads, we're going to park the bus on this one. Go for a point. So it has an impact upon the technical, the tactical, the physicality of the lineup, and that has to be applied on some form of sporting merit. Also, should Manchester City be found guilty, if you make that announcement at the end of April, early May, it's almost certain to trigger an appeal. Now, when is that appeal going to be heard?
Yeah.
Even if there's some form of fast track, and I don't think I think the grounds for appeal are actually very, very narrow, from my understanding. It doesn't mean that they can't be applied. You could have a crazy situation is whereby at the end of the season, this is what we think the Premier League table is going to look like, but the appeal's now started, and that has an impact upon the likes of Manchester City, the other club, should that be tainted for relegation, in terms of summer spending, in terms of planning, in terms of hiring and firing of staff on the non-footballing side. It's got huge implications for the business as a whole. So it's just an absolute nightmare in terms of the application.
Well done for not including Palace in that list of clubs who could potentially go down. It just shows how much more mature than me you are. I'm still sulking over the fact that all last week we were above you in the league table, but every single bookie, every single one of them, had us at shorter odds than you to go down. Because they all love you, Kieran, like everybody else in the middle. Don't upset Brighton by saying they've got longer. You get away with murder, you people. Andrew Dalton has our next question, Kieran. It's a very interesting one, as all our questions are. Andrew Dalton says, what pros and cons can you see with the idea of treating the revenue for player sales as coming in over 5 years for PSR purposes? It would match the treatment of purchases and stop inflated pairs of sales and purchases between clubs to gain PSR, and would also lessen the incentive to sell academy players as a quick fix to PSR problems. Bringing the change in suddenly could cause some clubs an issue, obviously, but with a bit of notice. Might it not be a better system? I have to say, Andrew, I'm looking at Kieran. I've not seen him nod like this. He's nodding like fiddling when he sees wonky jumps. I think he got the seal of approval from Mr. Maguire for this question here, Kieran.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I wouldn't say I've not railed, because I'm not a railing type of guy. I think anybody who's met me.
Yeah, you're not a railer. You're not a railer.
No, I'm not a railer, am I?
Me, on the other hand, you can't have 2 railers on this show, Kieran. That dynamic wouldn't work.
If you take a look, Andrew, and this question was probably sent in 18 months ago, and has now reached the top of the bar. But if you take a look at the squad cost ratio rules, which limit the amount of spending on player costs, and we've defined those in the past, to 85% of revenue from ticket sales, from broadcast, from commercial, and from player sales. But the player sales appear to be spread over 3 years. So it's not the 5 years that Andrew's suggesting, but it is 3 years. And I think the reason why it's over 3 years is that I think historically PSR was always assessed over a 3-year period. So there is logic in that. And it does take away some of the volatility. It does certainly disincentivize clubs to treat young men as commodities, as inventory, which is used to dig senior management out of a hole because they failed to run the club in a financially prudent enough manner to satisfy the rules. And I think it's the application as far as the fact that academies have become profit centres in the eyes of many club owners. Yes, they still will be profit centres, but you won't have that spike. We've lost £40 million more than we thought. Let's sell 2 or 3 academy players. Gets us out of a problem, regardless of whether those players particularly want to go, regardless of whether it's there's a bond, because there's always a bond between football players who've come through the academies and fans and so on.
David Stevens has our next question, Kieran. And again, it's one of those questions I like because it's a fairly simple one, but it's not one that's occurred to me before. David Stevens says, are managers' contracts amortised in the same way as player contracts? It's been my observation that managers are increasingly being traded like players in that compensation is being paid between clubs for managers as a transfer fee would be for players, and managers' contracts are being extended by clubs to protect their manager from being poached by others. Could the manager be seen as an asset of the club and thus amortised accordingly? It's good news for you, David. There's a bit more nodding going on. That 2-1 win over Forest has really got him going.
Well, no, I mean, both Andrew and David's questions are incredibly valid because we have real-world evidence of how they're being applied. When Manchester United headhunted Ruben Amorim, and that's what they did from Sporting, they agreed to pay Sporting £11 million in compensation to release Amorim from his contract early. That is exactly the same approach which is taken when it comes to the transfer of football player registrations. Now, if you take a look at the document which was released to the Securities and Exchange Commission in New York late on Thursday night, I recommend that you don't do this, by the way, you will find in the small print, it actually says that there was £6.3 million of unamortised contract as far as Ruben Amorim was concerned, and that is therefore going to have to hit Manchester United's results in the third quarter, which is of course where we now are from a time perspective. So yes, David, the short and the long answer there is that because of the significant level of compensation, I think Graham Potter cost Chelsea £22 million. For example, and they in theory were going to amortise that off the 6 years of his contract, except they sacked him within 6 months. So yes, the amortisation does work, but if they sack a player, then there is the hit for the remaining unamortised element because you're not going to get any compensation back from the player or the manager.
Our penultimate question comes from Sinhang Lai, and again, I hope I've pronounced that correctly. Please tell me if I haven't. The bad news for Sinhang Lai, Kieran, is that his question is too short for a nod, basically. So I won't be able to tell how you've responded, but it's still a very good question. And Sin says, can players specify which currency they want to be paid in by their club, or even say they want some of their salary paid in crypto? Now, we have discussed in the past the odd offer to, I think Lionel Messi was offered part of a salary in crypto, wasn't he? I think he was offered payment for a crypto endorsement in crypto, which he refused, I believe. Is that right?
Yes, that's a vote of confidence. Yes, going back to the question, A player is absolutely entitled to negotiate the terms of this in terms of their contract. And if you take a look at some countries which have very high inflation, so therefore, if let's say you've got a player and he agrees to join the Turkish league, now if you agree to, is it still lira that they use in Turkey? But there is very, very high inflation there, and therefore you could see the value of your contract decrease by 40 or 50 or 60% in a single year. If you therefore say, I want to be paid in dollars, then they would have to pay you the dollar equivalent in the local currency into your bank account, and that effectively protects the player from the vagaries of currency devaluations, which can be very significant. I remember when I went to Peru in 1989, 1990. It was I remember coming out of. I'd gone in search of the great river otter in the Manu National Reserve, and I'd gone in sort of. Yeah, we're on rafts and kayaks and so on, getting down into the Manu Reserve, and we were there for about 6 or 7 days, and I remember going in with a fair number of Peruvian intis, in there, except perhaps $100 worth at the time. And unbeknownst to us, and let's face it, this is pre-mobile phone era. Not that you get a signal there anyway. And we came back, and there'd been a military coup in Peru during the period where we had been seeking some otter zen, and I achieved some otter zen during that period of time. But there was inflation of I think around 4,000% in the week I was away. So therefore, my intis were worthless, and it used to be incredible in Peru that the price of a bottle of liter of water would change by the day in terms of hundreds, if not thousands, of intis. So yes, as far as a player is concerned, to protect their interests. And there are some countries in Europe and beyond where the domestic currency doesn't have the greatest of reputation. I would always insist on being paid historically in dollars. Given that the dollar is taking a hammering itself at present, I don't know why. Apparently, the economy is doing fantastic. But on the back of that, you get the protection. So yes, you'd normally tie yourself to a core currency.
Your favorite local grocery stores like Kroger, Ralph's, Fred Meyer, and more are now delivering on Uber Eats. Get 40% off your order of fresh, quality ingredients. Whether you just got home to an empty fridge or suddenly got a craving to whip up something new, you can get everything you need delivered in as little as 25 minutes. Get 40% off your order with code Kroger2026. Plus, members get $0 delivery fees. Order now on Uber Eats. Orders of $30 or more save up to $25. Ends 4/30/26. See app for details.
It's almost inevitable, Kieran, that there will be somebody who has resisted listening to this pod for a couple of years. Somebody who said, I don't care what you say, I know enough about football finance. And his mates have gone, no, listen to The Price of Football. It's great. It's really informative. It's fascinating. And he's switched on 2/3 of the way through to hear you talk about the military coup in Peru that took place when you were searching for the giant river otter. And he's going to be going to his mates in the pub tour and say, what the f- did you get me to listen to that for? There wasn't one mention of football finance. There was a bloke at the start ranting about VAR and pretending it was nothing to do with Palace getting a bloke sent off. And then I don't know if this is a question for you, Kieran, or for Nick DeMarco, but could I wonder a player or an agent ask for his money to be paid in whichever, say dollar, euro, or sterling, depending on which was performing better at a particular time?
You could ask. I suspect it would be rejected.
Okay.
I think it would cause quite a significant complication. I think you can't expect the other party to take all of the risk.
Yeah, fair point. Okay, our final question, Kieran, comes from John Hayden. And again, it's one of those questions you think this is almost too simple, but when you think about it, it's not one that I've ever actually asked you. And I wasn't entirely sure that I knew the answer myself. So that makes it a very good question, I think. And John Hayden says, when we hear in the media the massive amounts that top players are being paid, are those amounts quoted gross or net?
Well, I presume from that John means gross or net of tax. Now, it's almost certainly to be gross in terms of tax, but I think it does raise a separate issue. Having had an opportunity to inspect player contracts for various off podcast reasons, what is very clear is that football player contracts are highly incentivized, and that should be the case. So you, when me and Wazza were on the overlap last week, Wayne Rooney was very, very upfront. He says, if we failed to qualify for the Champions League, we'd take a 25% pay cut.
Oh.
Actually, I'm pretty certain the contract would have said you get a 25% increase if you do qualify for Champions League. But it's the same principle that applies. But there are other elements that are included in the contract. So I think when the figures are quoted in the media, it depends who's leaking the story. Sometimes people have an incentive to overstate or understate some things. The difference between a player's base salary and what they can earn in a particular month could easily be 20, 30, 40%. Because you get an appearance bonus, you get a win bonus. You will get bonuses for certain achievements if it's within Europe. You might get certain bonuses if you agree to go above your allocated number of slots with a sponsor. So, normally in a player's contract, say, look, guys, commercial income is really important. We therefore ask you to do two of these a year. Now, if you're the club superstar, the sponsors say, any chance we have Johnny over there, and he goes, well, I've got a family, I've got other things to do with my life. So these types of things, and even when it comes to appearance bonuses, they can be quite fascinating. You get so much if you start the match. If you are brought on as a substitute in the first half, you might get 60% of the match fee. If you are brought in as a substitute in the second half, it might be 40%. But if that second half appearance is in the last 10 minutes of the game, it might only be 20%. So you do see an awful lot. And I've heard of disputes between agents and clubs where the agent goes, no, he came on in the 78th minute, and the club secretary, no, it was the 82nd, mate.
Oh, really?
82nd, not entitled to such.
Yeah.
So he gets less money, and that can get quite tense.
Well, is it the 82nd minute of 109 minutes because VAR have nosed up again? Who knows? I really hope there's a player out there called Johnny. If anybody's got a player, even if it's a Sunday League team called Johnny, then please let us know. I mean, it's unlikely, but before the Wolves game against Villa, I would have thought it was unlikely that 4 players with the same surname would end up on the same team at the end of the game. There's 4 different Gomez's. I don't know if that is the plural of Gomez. Is it? It's Gomez. Is it? Maybe Gomez. Gomai. Is it Gomai? I don't know. Thank you to everyone who's joined the Price of Football Club. If you'd like to join the club too and get every episode a day earlier than everyone else, ad-free listening, an invite to our monthly Q&A sessions, bonus episodes, and more, then go to our website, priceoffootball.com. If you have a question you'd like answered on the show, email us at questions@priceoffootball.com. Don't forget you can follow us on Twitter and you can find us on YouTube. And if you'd like to buy one of our books or even a Price of Football t-shirt, you can go back to that very same website, priceoffootball.com. We'll be back on Thursday with our news pod, much more on that Man United figures and those West Ham figures, as well as many other stories. In the meantime, I shall hand you over to Mr. Kieran Maguire for his customary farewell.
Well, thank you to everybody for engaging with the show on so many levels. It brings a smile to our face reading some of the emails.
Some of them.
And yes, I do make mistakes. Thank you for reminding me. And I'll be the first to admit it. Even as a nerd, I often get things wrong. But there's another way you can actually support the show, and all those club members, and we'll be sending out details of our club event for March pretty soon. There's another way you can help the show, and that's just to give us 30 seconds of your time. Not a lot to ask. Yeah, we put a lot of time in the preparation and the delivery of the show, and we hope you enjoy it. Give us a little review. Helps us with the algorithms, helps us in the charts, helps us being seen to have a bit of credibility against all of the big boys in the football podcast industry. Doesn't matter what you say. You can even say you would rather have it presented by Kate Bush.
Oh.
We'll give you an opportunity to say well.
Oh.
And Patrick McNee of The Avengers. For people that never watch it, one of the greatest shows I've ever seen, especially as a teenager.
I would argue, I can't mention Kate Bush, will be here all night. She's one of my absolute idols. I think even now she's still underrated.
Incredible talent.
Incredible. The Avengers, I would argue, if you're not of our generation, look at us. I think possibly the high watermark of British television, The Avengers.
Yeah.
At a time when all this stuff was coming out of America, The Avengers is the most bonkers, yet the most British. It's just purely British, purely bonkers. The episode where John Steed and Emma Peel have to foil a group of English aristocrats who are trying to turn themselves into cats and drink milk out only. It's incredible. He was so cool as well, wasn't he?
Yes.
I've always wanted a sword stick ever since I was 15. I don't know where you buy a sword stick. You could tie a Stanley knife to the end of an umbrella. It's not quite the same thing, but that's just a little bowler hat and a sword stick. That'll do for me. Also, I like the fact, Kieran, that you're dealing with all these other big name pods by being a guest on them now. They seem to have, I don't know, there seems to be an agent out there booking people for these big pods who obviously lost my email address. I don't know. I'll give it to enough people. I'm looking forward to seeing you tomorrow night, Kieran, in person when we go to Liverpool University, which is always a pleasure. I always get excited because we're staying in a hotel which is literally 200 yards away from the technical college that John and Paul went to, which is just like, it's always a pleasure to go to Liverpool, so I'm looking forward to seeing that, especially as we've got very good guests, one of whom is Pete Hooton from The Farm.
Absolutely.
So both of us are going to have to try not to be fanboying all over him. And of course over our other guest, Julia Bold as well, who's a fantastic broadcaster.
Yes.
Fantastic. So we've got a Liverpool fan and an Everton fan. That never occurred to us before in Liverpool, did it? Bye, everybody.
Bye.
The price of football. The price of football.